Hello guys, welcome back to the MMASucka channel. My name is Frazer Krohn and this is your UFC 286 prelims preview. Yesterday we dropped the preview for the early prelims. 2 days ago we dropped the sort of the MMASucka podcast, myself and Tim Wheaton, mainly looking at the main and co-main events, but also touching on fights throughout the card that piqued our interest. And on Monday I dropped the review of the weekend from Merab Dvalishvili's win to Usman Nurmagomedov and so much more. So if that's something you're interested in, be sure to check out the channel, but keep it locked to MMASucka.com as well, because we've got tons of really good articles out on the site this week looking ahead to UFC 286. I'll link I'll link the previous video for the early prelims in the bio, so be sure to go and check that out. Where I just preview the first, I think it's the first 6 cards on the fight that I look at. But this will be looking at exclusively the prelim card. Now, as I said in my previous video, these fights have been all over the place. The scheduling of these fights, they had Joanne Wood on the main card. Now she's down on the prelims. So I'm just going off what Tapology and what the UFC website have as the official scheduling. You know, it's as they always say, it's subject to change. I remember a few years ago, Tom Breeze was meant to be on the card, and he had to withdraw on the day of the fight. So these cards are always subject to change. The scheduling of the fights are always subject to change, but I'm breaking down the 4 fights that are definitely not on the main card that I haven't looked at yet. So kicking off the prelims, obviously, like I say, I did the early prelim preview yesterday. That's up on the site now. I'll link it in the bio below, but go and check that out because it's an interesting look and a couple of surprising statistics that fly out from that one. But yeah, like I say, looking ahead now, opening up the prelims, Mohamed Mokaev versus Jafel Filho. I'll be honest, I'm disappointed with the level of competition that Mokaev has got in London. He's a ranked fighter now. I think he's ranked number 12 or number 13 in the UFC. And me and Tim spoke about it on the MMASucka podcast this week. He's 8-0, but it's difficult because at 22 years old, you still want, he's born in the year 2000. You still want this guy to grow and improve without rushing him too far forward. But his skill level is really he should be being rushed, this guy, because he is that good. Like I say, I'm slightly disappointed in the level of competition that Mokaev's been given for yet another homecoming. I think this is the third fight. This is the third fight that he's had. Obviously, he debuted in London against Cody Durden. He then faced Charles Johnson on the undercard of Tom Aspinall and Curtis Blades, and then he competed at UFC 280 against Malcolm Gordon, finishing that one by armbar in the 3rd round. Jafel Filho, he's not in the UFC yet. He's making his debut. Yes, he looked good on the Contender Series, and he is good. He's got 14 wins, 1 by decision. The rest via finish, various finishes. He got 5 TKOs and 5 KOs or TKOs and 8 wins by submission. He's enjoying a 5-fight winning run, of which 1 was on the Contender Series. But this is Mohamed Mokaev. It's the 2nd time he's been handed a promotional newcomer. Charles Johnson was a promotional newcomer when he faced Mohamed Mokaev. Now Jafel Filho is a promotional newcomer for Mohamed, and another promotional newcomer for Mohamed Mokaev. At this point, it is what it is. Mokaev can only beat what's in front of him. And speaking today on media day, I'm recording this a day before I release it. He said he's got a clear path of how he wants his sort of career to play out, at least, on his way to the title. He wants to, first and foremost, he needs to fight and win this weekend at UFC 286 because, Jafel Filho, although Mohamed Mokaev is a huge favorite, Filho has got these finishes. He has got finishes on his record. He is heavy-handed. Maybe I'm alluding to it already, but I'm picking Mokaev to win this one. He's got such a relentless wrestling style. His hands are improving fight on fight. He's got that raw confidence of someone with an unbeaten record. And it is working. He's already laid out how he wants his sort of the next year of his career to go. He wants to beat Filho at UFC 286 this Saturday. He then wants to beat a ranked opponent at UFC 290. He wants to win a title eliminator on an Abu Dhabi card, which usually happens around October, and then he wants to win the UFC title before March 2024. I can't knock his confidence. I can't knock his spirit, and I can't knock his relentless, urge to want to be the best. But Filho's a tough operator. I do think Mokaev's going to get it done, especially because the fight's in London. But I don't think this is maybe going to be as easy as his last couple of fights against Charles Johnson and Malcolm Gordon, and obviously Cody Durden when he welcomed Cody Durden to the UFC. It is what it is. For Mokaev, he can only beat what's in front of him. But don't be surprised if this one is a little bit closer than many imagine. But yeah, like I said, my official pick is Mokaev, probably by decision. Filho seems like he knows his way around an octagon. He's 14-1, so he's made that walk plenty of times. How will he handle the UFC nerves? I'm sure he'll be fine. Moving swiftly on, we've got Sam the Future Patterson versus Yanal Ashmoz. Again, two UFC debutants facing off in London. I like this fight. Sam Patterson, he's so tall for the weight. Like we said with Jai Herbert, and as people have commented on with Jalen Turner, Sam Patterson is 6'3", and his opponent's 5'9", and yet they both make 155 pounds fight on fight. Sam Patterson, he's from Watford. Obviously, it's pretty much London. He's unbeaten in his last 10 fights, including 9 wins, and he's got a win over Team McGregor. McGregor, one of McGregor's teammates, Kean Cowley, who's he's a coach on Team McGregor, as tough is being filmed as we speak. He predicts the finish, and he intends to set a high pace for this fight. Listening to interviews with him, and he says, "Look, I don't know too much about my opponent. He hasn't fought since." Hasn't fought for over a year when he picked up a win on the Challenger Series, the PFL Challenger Series, last year. He hasn't fought for an entire year. But what he did say is, look, he's not going to grow a foot in height. He's not going to be able to completely change his body type. And I think that's what Patterson needs to do is keep Ashmoz on the end of his punches. He's so tall, Sam Patterson, 6'3" to 5'9". If he can fight long and not do what Stefan Struve does by fighting a lot small, or did, I should say, he's retired now, but fighting a lot smaller than his frame suggests that he would be able to. I think Sam Patterson could either cruise to victory in this one, or he could get a finish. And we saw on the Contender Series that Patterson did get the rear naked choke finish. Sam Patterson's a horrible. It must be a horrible fighter to face, because not only is he 6'3", obviously on the feet, he's also 6'3" on the ground, and with those long limbs, it makes it difficult to defend against chokes and whatnot on the ground. So if Ashmoz thinks he's safe on the ground, he's most certainly not. He did get taken down a lot in his UFC day on the Contender Series, but like I say, he locked up the finish and he got the victory. So again, I might be alluding to it too heavily now, but Sam Patterson is my pick for this fight all day long, and I think he does it with relative ease in his home city of London. Next up, we've got the UFC debut, and another UFC debutant, but this one is an exciting one: Chris Duncan versus Omar Morales. Morales, obviously not a UFC debutant. He's had 6 UFC fights, and he's been a favorite in every single one of these fights, which is an interesting fact, seeing as this fight is near even. Morales is minus 115, and Chris Duncan's minus 105. I haven't seen too much of these guys during fight week so far. I'll be interested to see what these guys sort of have to say. But Morales he's a really good fighter. Fighting out of his nickname is Venezuelan fighter, so that kind of alludes to where he's from. But he fights out of Florida at Hard Knocks 365. he is 37 years old, and he's coming off 3 losses in 4 fights. But let's take into consideration that he's been the favorite in all of these fights. He took on Gabriel Benitez, beat him. He was the favorite against Giga Chikadze. Yes, he did lose to him. Favorite against Shane Young, beat him. Favorite against Jonathan Pearce and Uso Medic. However, he lost both of those by finish. He was scheduled to fight in January, although he had to withdraw from that with an injury. He's far more experienced at the higher level than Chris Duncan. He's got an 11-3 record overall, but Chris Duncan's got a 9-1 record overall. With one of those fights, with 2 of those fights being in the on the UFC Contender Series. He's fought for Bellator multiple times. He suffered one loss in his UFC career, and that was by finish to Borshev, who obviously has gone on to have a career in the UFC, although that hasn't quite gone how he planned, to say the least. But 78% of Duncan's wins have come via knockout, including his win on the Contender Series against Charlie Campbell. Now, that win in particular has really sort of stood out as, he's proven that he's got that dog in him, Chris Duncan, because he was out on his feet and he came from behind to knock out his opponent and obviously secure a UFC contract. And now he's making his debut. That was back in August of last year, and now he's making his debut on this card. It is a slight late notice fight. I know Michal Figlak was meant to be the man facing Chris Duncan, but almost as soon as that fight was announced, Figlak pulled out and Morales stepped in. So on paper, it's a replacement fighter, but Morales had more than enough time to prepare for this one. Like I say, I don't know how this fight is going to play out. There's no clear victory for any man. For Chris Duncan, I'm hoping that Joanne Calderwood is sort of countrywoman gets a victory on the undercard. And then he's got Casey O'Neill, who obviously was born in Scotland, fighting on the main card. For Chris Duncan, I think it's going to be all about confidence. It's going to be all about handling the pressure of making his UFC debut on a pay-per-view. He is from Scotland, but it's that we're crossing no borders to get down to London. I think it's going to be all about handling those nerves. Morales has made the walk 6 times, been a favorite in every fight, fought Giga Chikadze, fought, Gabriel Benitez, fought some really good guys, Urso Medic. I don't like to pick against someone that's from the same sort of aisle as me, but I am going to pick Morales on this one. And I just think that he may be able to handle the pressure a little bit better than Chris Duncan. But I'm more than happy to be humbled by Chris Duncan if he goes out there on Saturday night and pulls off the victory. But it's going to be tough. Like I say, Morales is experienced. Another fact, Morales is 37 and coming off 2 straight losses. Chris Duncan's 29. He's just going into his peak. I want to see a Chris Duncan win because I do think that he's got a much higher ceiling in the UFC than Morales. But like I say, it's going to be a tough fight. I'm going to pick Morales on this one, but it's an exciting fight. And headlining the prelims now, we'll move on to the last fight that I'll break down on this video. Headlining the prelims, Jack Tank Shaw versus Makwan, Mr. Finland, Amirkhani. What a fight this is. UK-based fans will know all about Makwan Amirkhani because they seem to wheel him out pretty much every UFC London card. And he always puts on a show. He trains out of SBG Ireland, or he did do. I'm not sure where he trains out of now. But this is a fight for Jack Shaw. He's making his featherweight debut. He's 16-1 as a bantamweight, the former Cage Warriors bantamweight champion. He's coming off a loss last time out against Ricky Simone, and that was by finish. It's an arm triangle choke in the second round on the Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez undercard. He's long overdue a featherweight fight, in my opinion. Jack Shaw, he's always been huge for bantamweight. We've got a video, an article on the site at the moment, MMASucka.com, looking at Jack Shaw making his featherweight debut, and make sure to check that one out because it's a really good read. But he's coming back from his first ever defeat. I think he's been handed a fairly easy fight for his style. Makwan Amirkhani isn't an easy fight for anyone. But for Jack Shaw's style, I think Makwan Amirkhani is a slightly more straightforward fight. he'll look to use his wrestling and take Shaw down. He averages 4.15 takedowns per 15 minutes, Amirkhani. But Shaw's happy to use his BJJ, and he's got 8 submission wins. He's happy to work off his back if he needs to, but his hands are improving fight on fight. Against Timur Valiev, the fight before he lost to Ricky Simone, we saw him drop Valiev multiple times, really hurt him on the feet, and he was unlucky not to get the finish in that one. Amirkhani has been knocked out in 3 of his last 5 losses. And as I said, Shaw's showing that improvement thus far with his hands, fight on fight. He's got an extra 10 pounds of weight that he doesn't have to cut, which means that his hand, he's going to more than likely be even heavier with his hands. I'm going to pick Shaw to win and do so dominantly. I really do think Jack Shaw's going to win this one and make it look easy and announce himself as a potential featherweight contender later on down the line. He wins against Amirkhani here. Hopefully he gets out once or twice more this year at featherweight. And then we're talking about getting him in the rankings, because he was in the bantamweight rankings before he decided to make the move up. So it's that's a really, really good fight to round out the prelims. So that's your 4 prelim fights. Like I say, I'll link in the bio below. I've already broken down the early prelims. You've got Juliana Miller versus Veronica Macedo opening up the card. You've got plenty of really interesting fights. Jai Herbert's on the card, Joanne Wood, Jake Hadley. So excited for these next 2 guys making the walk. Chris Leroy, Duncan, and Lerone Murphy. I'm really excited for those 2. This was your prelims preview. And now tomorrow, after the weigh-in, I'm going to watch the weigh-in, see how everyone looks on the scale, see if anyone misses weight, fingers crossed that they don't. And then I'm going to drop a main card preview. So keep it locked to MMASucka.com. Keep it locked to our YouTube channel, because I'll be dropping that video tomorrow. But this has been your prelims, UFC 286 prelim preview. Thanks for watching.